So we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, all. My name is Donna Rewalt. I'm the County Extension Director and one of the members of the team working with our nonprofit agency funding program. And this is our virtual information session. This is the second of two sessions. We are recording this session and we will share this session and the previous session online following today. I would like to invite you to mute yourself if you are not speaking. You should have come on muted. Also, we are inviting everyone who's participating to type questions in the chat box as they come up throughout the presentation. We will monitor them. We will ask them all at the end and also offer an additional opportunity if there's some additional clarification or live questions that follow that portion. I'm going to turn this over to Keith Lane.
Thank you, Donna. I was in the mid-attempt to try to close some screen doors, but they're fine open. Hopefully there won't be too much noise going on outside. Sorry about that, folks. My name is Keith Lane. I'm the Durham County Budget Director, and I'm going to go through a few slides that sort of highlight that overview of how we got to this point and highlight the process, the revised nonprofit RFP, which is request for proposal and application process, and hopefully I'll get through this relatively quickly. Over the past several years, or 3+ years ago, the county had a nonprofit process that emphasized different target areas than the 4 target areas that are being emphasized in this revised process. The key issue was that the county had well over 40 nonprofits that it supported, and a large number of those nonprofits got a small amount of money. In fact, over half of the nonprofits, over 20+ nonprofits, got between $5,000 and $10,000. In a review of that process that was requested by management and the board, the county came to the conclusion that it would be ultimately better to provide larger grants to fewer nonprofits in order to create greater impact. That was the major issue that was discussed and decided on after a review of the previous nonprofit process. So moving forward, the county will support larger grants to fewer nonprofits. Around 12 are expected across 3 target areas. There is a 4th target area, but we will explain the nuance of that 4th target area a little later in this presentation. Other major issues related to this revised nonprofit process coming up. This process will focus on direct COVID-19 pandemic relief. Also, and very important, the county is seeking proposals from nonprofits that are working to create more equitable and resilient systems. The concept of equitability and resiliency will be defined a little bit later by each of the target areas, but it's a very important part of this overall process. Due to the pandemic, the current nonprofit grant process, the revised one we're dealing with right now, will run for 18 months from January 2021 to July of 2022. That's a year and a half, and that means a half-year payment for the current fiscal year starting in January to June, and then a full year payment from July of 2021 to June of 2022. After that, the county will have a future RFP processes that will run for 3 years, not a year and a half, but for 3 years, with the goal of creating a more inclusive review process and development and other issues related to the nonprofit process. The key there is to point out is that we recognize that this year's process is relatively quick. We had some questions at our last information session about why there's only a month available. There's a whole host of reasons for that, and if you want answers to that question, you can ask that question a little bit later when there's time, and we'll try to answer it. But we do also recognize that in the future, after this year and a half process, we will have a much more inclusive, community-oriented funding process. Next slide, please, Anna. Thank you. We have a dedicated website on the Durham County's main website. You can go to under the departments, you can select the budget office, and under the budget office department, off to the left side, there's a selection for the nonprofit process. In the slide you're looking at a picture of what's available on that slide. It's not everything on that page, web page. Not everything is showing. Some key things that are shown on that page are the request for proposal, which is an in-depth sort of explanation of what the county is looking for. If this presentation is a little light, that RFP document, request for proposal, should inform some of the areas that you might have some confusion on. There's also there's an application you can download and use. There's also a request, a manager's memorandum about the process. And I believe we've added a few more issues, a copy of this particular presentation. There's also a growing fact page or frequently asked questions that you can review from questions that were asked at the last meeting and some key points if you want. Key thing again is the application and the RFP are on that web page. If you have any questions, please contact Anna Hawksworth at the email up on this slide. It's also, her email is also on that website. She is the point person, and if she cannot answer your questions, she will direct you to one of the many team members who have worked on this entire process to help answer those questions. And by the way, I do want to recognize while the budget office is helping with the overview part, each target area has subject matter experts from county departments that are available to help throughout the process that will be answering questions today, but can also help during the application process and with any other issues a nonprofit may have. We have a number of those employees on this call who will hopefully be able to answer some of your questions as well. The most important thing you need to note here on the calendar, thank you for the change, Anna, is that the application process started on October the 15th, but the more important number is when does the nonprofit application process close? And that date is November the 12th at 5 p.m. After that, from November to December, a team of county employees and citizens for each target area will review nonprofit applications using a matrix that will make consistent scoring as much as possible across all the 4 target areas. We'll review the nonprofits and select up to 12 or around 12, a maximum of 12 nonprofits for funding for an 18-month period. The announcement of those selected nonprofits will occur in January, and the first funding checks will be sent to selected nonprofits in mid to late January. Eligibility, who's eligible to apply and who's eligible to be selected as a nonprofit. Nonprofits with 501c3 status and community-based groups with a fiscal sponsor that has a 501c3 status are eligible. One application should be submitted for a project with multiple partners. One organization with a 501c3 status must receive the funds and then provide fiscal oversight if they are supporting multiple partners. And a corollary to that is nonprofits, a single nonprofit may pass through all or some of the funds as sub-grants or micro-grants to other 501c3 and community-based organizations. In fact, one of our target areas is looking for that type of action specifically. Donna Rewalt will talk about that in the food support target area a little later on in this presentation. Thank you, Anna. Eligibility. Eligible activities include direct services to children, adults, and families, development of tools and resources that can be used by families and organizations, training and professional development, community-based research and engagement, and planning for policy and systems change. And again, if you have some question about some of these terms, feel free to ask that later. There's a chat program you can use with Zoom right now, and you can be asking some of those questions in chat, and we'll try to answer them. We will also, if we do answer them in chat, we will also answer them verbally a little bit later, or you can ask it verbally after the presentation's done. We should have at least 30 minutes worth of time for nonprofits to ask questions. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass it off here to Quayle, a member of our group. Quayle is our, what is your title again, Quayle, exactly? I don't want to mispronounce it.
Good morning, everyone. Quayle Rashid Henry, Racial Equity Officer.
Thank you, Quayle.
And thank you, Keith. I'm going to take us through the guiding principles for the nonprofit process. So the county will be using these principles to review and select proposals. And the main principle that we want applicants to address, that we want to highlight and emphasize, is equity. And so the COVID pandemic has highlighted inequities in different groups, and we recognize the tremendous hardship that communities are facing And it's one of the reasons why addressing equity at this pivotal point in our transition process and transition year is important. We essentially believe that addressing equity through the guiding principles will help us to achieve our goals in our community, our shared goals. So what is equity? Pretty quickly, it's the quality of being just and fair, and it's essentially providing folks what they need in order to thrive. And so we want to make sure that race, gender, income, age, the common characteristics that we think about in terms of categorizing people are not determining someone's ability to achieve in life. And we also recognize that equitable approaches have to address root causes, which are the isms and the things systematically that prevent people from experiencing different outcomes. Systems thinking. So we know that this type of thinking is about looking at systems to create certain conditions or issues. A system is essentially made up of component parts, and it's important that those parts work together as a cohesive whole. The parts can include things like relationship, policies, cultural trends, or common practices. And system thinking asks us to think about the current approaches to ensure that we are working with people who are most affected by the problem. And it helps us to figure out what parts need to be improved or changed to get better results. Capacity building is a strategy that is often used to help groups increase their skills building, create new tools and processes, and expand resources and improve their ability to get jobs done. So essentially, we are investing in the growth and development of organizations and groups by providing needed funding to the community. Community engagement. This is another area where the emphasis on relationship is very important. Working in partnership with people most impacted or affected by the problem to create a solution is the idea behind good engagement. Essentially, you want to work to build trust and ensure that there is open two-way communication between the organization and community members. And ultimately, what we want to see is shared leadership in decision-making and community empowerment. And finally, collaboration. And what we mean by this is working together with other groups to build trust and partnership and achieve stronger results. So now we're going to move to the target areas. There are 4 target areas, as was mentioned before: food security, increasing food access and improving the local food system, child, youth, and family wellness and learning. What we mean by that is supporting the overall wellness of young people and their families, workforce development, helping residents in low-wage jobs transition into high-demand industries with opportunities for salary growth and upward mobility, and safe and stable housing. So this is the area where we do want to share a caveat with you. Ultimately, we're looking to ensure low-income seniors and disabled individuals can continue living in safe, affordable housing. However, Durham County will be giving funds to the city of Durham to further strengthen a nonprofit-led housing repair program, helping low-income seniors and disabled individuals to continue to reside in safe, decent housing. So as a result, the county is not accepting applications in this area at this time. For more information on housing, please refer to our RFP. There's some additional information that is included there. And I think at this time, I turn it back over to Keith or Donna.
Donna. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Quayle. So I'd like to review a little bit about the food security target area. I want to acknowledge that I work in partnership on this area with Michael Davis from Strategic Initiatives and Kelly Warnock in Public Health. The overall goals for our food security target area are to ensure that all residents have access to safe, affordable, nutritious food, and also to strengthen our food system. And that does include farms, production, transportation, retail, and operations such as food banks and food pantries. So we're open to considering all aspects of the food system. So we intend to, in this area, fund approximately 4 nonprofit organizations that work to increase food access for vulnerable populations. support a strong and effective food system. And that, again, could include farms, food production, food delivery, or any organization that gets food on Durham's tables. Other funding streams and resources to maximize reach and impact can also be used and are encouraged. That could include things like maximizing SNAP and EBT benefits, equipment, relationships, matching funds, human capital, all kinds of things that bring additional resources to the project. So as part of this focus area, we have decided that we wanted to have one of those grants focus particularly on a microgrants opportunity. So we're looking for an organization that can manage a microgrants program. That program would involve funding smaller food security organizations. That has emerged as a need during the COVID-19 emergency. What we have found is that we have, for example, over 60 food pantries in the Durham area. Many of them, are all volunteer led, all volunteer run. They have a tremendous expansion of need and demand for the services they provide and the food that is provided, and many of them do need additional resources. We are hoping that a microgrants program will help find ways to get some of those resources to those types of organizations. We are interested in an organization that perhaps has experience managing a microgrants or similar type of program that passes through money to other organizations. And microgrants applicants will be asked to answer supplemental question number 8, which kind of addresses some of these issues of capacity and experience that are relevant for this particular area. This is different than some of the other grants if you just wanted to partner with someone and you were providing sub-granting to them and you were identifying those partners up front. These are not partners you would not know who are going to get the microgrants necessarily before there perhaps be an application process. So you can see more about that in the RFP. For each of our areas, one of the things that we invite applicants to do is to share possible outcomes. We want to offer that we have a caveat in that our county staff will work with each organization that's funded to determine the best measures for those outcomes. We know that you all, though, are working closest to the issues that you're going to be requesting funds for, and that you are the experts in your areas. And so you will probably have a great way of suggesting some possible measures. We just give you some examples in the RFP. So these are not things that you were tied to, but it could be things like the number of meals served, the racial and ethnic breakdown of people served, and to go deeper, something maybe like the economic impact, the number of jobs created, or the number of farms supported, or any other evaluation measures that you see as appropriate. I think just know that we'll work in partnership with that after we determine who's funded to determine what your final measures would be. And I believe we will be going next to child, youth, and family wellness. Kate, I believe.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Elander. I'm Durham County's Early Childhood Coordinator. And on this particular focus area, I'm working together with Carlene Fife-Phillips with the library and Laura Khalil with the City Office on Youth. Our overall goal here with this focus area is to create more opportunities, spaces, and resources for young people and their families that support their overall wellness and learning. We recognize that the pandemic has made things especially difficult for families, for youth and young people, and for the systems that support families and youth and young people. So that's the reason why we're interested in really zeroing in on wellness at this time as we continue to respond to the pandemic and work toward building the future that we want for our community, for children and families. One thing to note about this particular opportunity We will be distributing approximately a third of the funds that are allocated for this particular focus area to the Office on Youth to respond directly to the priorities that were identified out of their recent youth listening project. It feels really important to support youth at this time with the strengths and opportunities and challenges that they have directly identified. So we're really excited about that opportunity and partnership with the Office on Youth. So for the remaining funds, we are seeking applications from organizations focused on wellness and learning with young people ages 0 to 24 and their families. We did have a question that came in at the first info session earlier this week about whether or not applications can be accepted from organizations that focus just on supports for youth and don't necessarily focus on supports for their family, or applications focused on supports for the family that includes the children, but isn't focused specifically on supports for children and youth. And the answer to that is yes, for both of those. Applications do not have to be just focused on, or do not have to be focused on young people and their families. It can be either or. But it is also important, I think we recognize that serving children and youth in the context of their families where possible and where appropriate is really important, particularly at this time of increased isolation and stress during the pandemic. Okay, so in terms of eligible activities, you can see the types of activities that we're interested in funding here on this slide: creating safe places, spaces, and approaches that promote health, wellness, and learning, offering targeted supports and encouragement that are culturally informed, culturally relevant, trauma-informed, and that honor other types of lived experiences and backgrounds in our youth and families. One thing that is particularly important to us in this focus area is providing young people and their families opportunities for decision-making and leadership in creating the types of supports that might be funded here. And in fact, you'll see on the next slide, but we are prioritizing applications that incorporate increased decision-making and power sharing and leadership with youth and their families. And as we talk about building the future we'd like to see here in Durham for young people and their families coming out of the pandemic, we're interested in ways that organizations and groups might work together with young people and families to reimagine and redesign the policies, systems, and institutions that influence health, wellness, and learning for young people. Next slide, please. Thank you. So these are the outcomes that we are looking for in these with these applications. And as Donna said earlier, we will work together with you to identify the final outcomes and measures. So this is a possible list of outcomes, but there are other possibilities as well, and we'll work together with you to finalize those. And the other thing I'd like to mention is in the RFP for this focus area, we have listed a potential set of projects just to help you better understand the type of work that we're looking to fund. That's not meant to be an exclusive list of projects, but just trying to show you with this fairly broad focus area the types of efforts that we're looking for. With that, I think I am passing it to Andrew Miracle. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Miracle, and I'm the Economic Development Officer for Durham County. So the Workforce Development RFP was created in consultation with a number of county departments and partners to help refine the focus of this target area and how we might best utilize this opportunity as a means to support the county's goals in this space. So the overarching goal of this RFP is to help residents in low-wage jobs transition into industries with career growth. And we're looking for nonprofits to help recruit, enroll, and support target audience residents until they, one, complete coursework in Durham Tech's Back to Work initiative, and are ultimately employed in an industry with salary and promotion growth potential. So just to kind of quickly address a couple of the items that were just mentioned. So when we talk about target audience residents, and this is spelled out in the RFP, we're talking about, as indicated earlier, residents who are currently in a low-wage job that really don't have a growth opportunity in that position. And so we're looking to transition them into a career path where they have that upward mobility. These could be residents whose industry has been impacted by the pandemic, including a number of industries, but obviously, hospitality, restaurants, tourism, whatever it may be. A number of people's employment is currently being impacted by the pandemic. So obviously, they are part of the target audience. Additionally, citizens that may need assistance attaining high school equivalency testing so that they are eligible to enroll in community college. Residents that may need assistance in career counseling, understanding what these industries are. And then the last identified target audience criteria are residents that have been justice involved and face additional barriers to employment as well. And then when we talk about Durham Tech's Back to Work initiative, as detailed on the slide, we're talking about receipt of high demand industry certifications in less than 1 year for entry-level positions. And this is also something that is spelled out in greater detail in the RFP. This includes a number of industries that are thriving in Durham County, that continue to offer jobs, and not only offer jobs, but offer jobs that really have that upward mobility that we're talking about, that is a priority for the county. This includes IT, skills trades, biotech, life sciences, healthcare, and you can see beyond that, there's a number of programs that are spelled out in the RFP. So additionally, funded workforce development programs will, and we'll just run through these last kind of set of bullet points there and explain what we're envisioning and how we're thinking about this. So we do not expect nonprofits to be able to achieve these lofty goals on their own. One, we're looking for you to use your client base, people that you're already in contact with, to share this message with them, to help us recruit them into this programming, to connect them to existing resources, and to ultimately support them as they go on this journey. Okay, so we have identified 3 significant partners that are currently working in this space that, when nonprofits, when you put your proposals together, that you consider how you're going to plug into these existing resources. And so in the RFP, there's essentially 2.5 pages just listing in detail all of the resources that are currently available. And obviously through Durham Tech and through the Durham Workforce Development Board, there are currently a number of resources out there that are identified to help achieve these goals, whether it's the high school equivalency testing, whether it's career counseling, skill building, whatever it may be. So we're asking you in your response to think about how you're going to plug in and work with these partner agencies. So the bullet, behind that really reiterates that, but we can also think about this in an additional way. Connect residents with necessary support services. So we have listed in the RFP as well. We understand that there are a number of barriers that are impacting residents' ability to access these educational opportunities and these professional certification opportunities. Obviously, financial aid is a factor, and so we identify how to access financial aid. That's important, but we understand that may not be enough. Additional support services may be needed. All of the non-credit programming that we're talking about with Durham Tech to get these certifications, I believe essentially for the most part, if not all of that programming is offered online. And so we understand there may be technology barriers. The provision of laptops, hotspots may be necessary. In the event that this is, we're not talking about online classes, transportation may be a barrier. Childcare may be a barrier. So when you're putting your budget, use of funds, your proposals together, we certainly want these elements to be considered with how we can assist residents in kind of overcoming these barriers in terms of how you will use county funds to help us achieve these goals. So the last 2 bullet points there, we're also looking for the nonprofits to coordinate the progression of residents between milestones, to be there as that support contact for your clients that you work with, to move them along. To, you know, if it's the high school equivalency testing, to the career counseling, you know, to attaining the certificate, to attaining the employment, that you're there as a support to help move them along. And the last bullet is an important one as well. We have not resolved every gap in the continuum of services that we have identified. As we go through this, those gaps will reveal themselves as well. And we would just ask that as part of that, you know, we have not identified every solution in the RFP that we've put out there. So, you know, you may be able to bring solutions to your RFP response. We welcome that. And as we go through this process, we will look for your continued assistance in identifying and attempting to resolve those gaps. And that concludes my slide. And so with that, I will hand it off, I believe, to Keith.
Thank you, Andy. Thank all of our subject matter experts for their description of their target areas and most importantly, for the work they've done and the thought and the passion they've put into this process to develop a conversation, hopefully an ongoing, more in-depth and more collaborative conversation with nonprofits in Durham County government. I'm really excited to see how this moves forward. So, one of the big questions I'm sure all the nonprofits have is the criteria that the county will be using for proposal review. And they are as follows. They will, obviously, a proposal needs to align with one of the 3 target areas. It needs to strongly contribute to Durham's recovery from COVID-19. It needs to include achievable and measurable outcomes. If that concerns you, we have staff in the budget office and we have subject matter experts in these areas that can help you develop measures or review your outcomes and measurable outcomes as they are part of the application. Don't be afraid to speak up and say you need some help or you would like some review, and our office and or the subject matter experts will help you with that. Another key review area is the proposal collaborative, and does it complement other work being done in this target area? Does the proposal address equity? And one of the other guiding principles that was discussed earlier, again, these principles are described in a little bit more detail in the request for proposal, the RFP, which is a document on the website you can download. And finally, does the proposal indicate capacity to meet the goals and manage funds and reporting requirements? And again, here, if you have some concerns about your nonprofit's ability to manage this process, and if you were to be selected, keep up with what might be requested from the county, feel free to send an email to Anna Hawksworth in our office, the email that's identified on the webpage, and we can help you develop ways to support that process, or we can help support you in that process. We want to make this proposal review and proposal process as equitable as possible across as many nonprofits, and give as many nonprofits equal footing in getting reviewed equally, and so forth, moving on. So having said that, the last and key thing I want to say to everyone here listening is thank you so much to all the nonprofits for the time, for your time and your work in Durham. It does not go unnoticed from all our subject matter experts and many county employees, the work that nonprofits do. It may be somewhat unseen by county citizens, but we recognize the valuable work that we do, and we hope that this nonprofit process will be more collaborative and that we can magnify the work that you do with targeted funding and key support from our subject matter experts. That's the whole point of this revised process moving forward. With that said, thank you again. And now we're going to turn it over to questions from you all. I think what we did last time was we went through questions that were asked, that were written verbally, and we'll review those questions that were in the chat, and then we'll open it up to any verbal questions folks may have.
That is correct, Keith.
All right, Donna.
Thank you. So we're going to start off. I'm going to ping pong a little bit between a couple of folks. Michael, can you offer one of the questions that has been raised during the chat?
Yeah, I'm going to try, Donna. Hey, everybody. Michael Davis with Durham County. I'm going to try to kind of go to the top and start there so we can account for everything. Because David and others have done a great job answering the questions throughout. But we also know that there may be others that want to opine as well. And there may be, y'all may have follow-up questions. So I'll start with, I think the first one I see from Jacqueline Brown. Will the matrix be provided, that matrix for rating these? And can we have it now? And Kate noted in an answer that the criteria in the matrix is all available on pages 6 and 7 of the RFP. And that's on the website where the link is posted. And I'll repost that link in just a second. So yeah, you'll definitely be able to see the criteria.
Yeah, and Keith just reviewed those so nicely just a moment ago.
Yep.
So if you have questions about them, please let us know. David, what do you have?
Hello, everyone. I have a question about micro grants that Kate Elander already kind of addressed, but it was the question was, is it preferred that there be additional application process for those micro grants, or should we identify them in the upfront in the submission? So Kate, can you take that one since you're a specialist?
Sure, and Donna can add, Donna or Michael, but there is a question in the application that specifically addresses approaches to administering a micro grant program for the food security focus area, but really for any focus area that might propose to administer micro grants. So a separate application is not needed, but you can discuss your approach to micro granting in question 8 of the application.
And I believe that would be the same if you were sub-granting. And I think we just want to make sure that distinction is really clear. So microgrants process would be more of an application-driven process that you are managing and creating as a nonprofit, whereas sub-granting is a very typical approach that we have in grant making, where you are working in partnership maybe with another nonprofit, and you're also providing some of the funding to that nonprofit and sub-granting to them as part of the service delivery of that particular grant. Those are related aspects in that they involve particular skill sets, but they are not. They are different in the way of requiring applications or not requiring applications. So part of in the food security part of the question does address how you would design a process that would be equitable. For example, is one of the parts of that question number 8. Hopefully that is helpful. Okay, Michael.
Yeah. There are a couple of cut and dry questions, but again, just want to certainly name them and try to just go through all of them quickly. There was one from Andrew Jones. Durham Tech is an identified partner in the RFP. Is the Durham Tech Foundation eligible to apply to support back to work effort or efforts in the target areas? And Andy Miracle, our subject matter expert in that area, said that he would check back. Andy, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but he also added his information in the chat.
Yeah, nothing to expand on that point, but we'll certainly look into it and get back to Andrew.
And then Sean, thanks Andy. Sean asked if the city's Department of Community Development's the lead department for target area 4, and Drew said yes. And noted the addendum to the RFP there, and he and Drew later also pointed folks to another RFP, I believe. And Drew, I don't know if you posted the link to that.
So Kate posted the correct link to the City of Durham Community Development Department's RFP with addenda for a rehab.
Perfect. Yeah. So Sean, hopefully that answers your question and gets that. So yeah, we want to ping it back to David.
Yep.
Hello. So Isabel Geffner asked, how much money is allocated for child, youth, and family wellness and learning? And that's a great question. We have some target amounts for each target area. Sorry for the duplicate word there. But we're not really committing at this point until we kind of see the totality of applications, a specific amount for each target area. So it's pending. I would say there's some guidance in the application as far as like the approximate amount for each agency, but that's going to kind of depend on the applications. And, you know, if an application knocks the ball out of the park, there may be some, the subject matter experts may get together and make some different decisions. And kind of a corollary question that was just asked, the maximum awards are 50 to 75,000 for 18 months. I think that's about the right amount. The county works in the wonderful fiscal year, but yeah, I believe if I remember correctly, the target amount for each nonprofit would be about 75,000. Going back to my prior answer, as far as is that the final amount?
Yeah, I think we have 25 to 75 listed for each one.
I'll finish one more and then get Michael back on. If our application fits under multiple target areas, I think we answered this pretty clearly in the chat, I hope. But just for everyone else that wasn't able to keep track, we love ideas that impact the community in greater ways than just one. But for the actual application, we will need you to apply for the one that's the most logical for your what you're trying to do with your nonprofit funding. Feel free, of course, to advocate for yourself and mention the other areas that will be affected in the actual application. Michael.
For workforce development projects, is there a required timeline to complete coursework in the Back to Work initiative? This may not be a realistic short-term goal for individuals with low literacy or language skills. I'm just working through the chat. Andy, were you able to address that one?
I was not, but I can speak to that now. So, okay. You know, we're kind of looking at the totality of the continuum, right? So really kind of starting with high school equivalency and moving from there on. And so maybe if you're different people are going to be at different points. Maybe some people need that high school equivalency testing, and that's the goal for right now. And maybe some people with a little bit of coaching are ready for the back to work coursework. So people are going to be at different places, and we understand that. And I think we're looking at 18 months, obviously, but really beyond. And so it's, what kind of part of the continuum are you working on? And where can we see those outcomes that we're looking to achieve? So maybe not everyone is going to be able to enroll residents within the next 6 months, and we understand that. But I think kind of, having a long-term view of what that application submission looks like in terms about how you're going to progress individuals through the continuum. So let me know if that doesn't answer the question. But while I did want to address one other point that came up in the last information session as well, regarding the impacts of COVID and how that is impacting on-the-job training, internships, and apprenticeships right now. Obviously, those are not operating at full capacity, understandable. But you know, those services are so critical to the goals that we're trying to accomplish here. We still want agencies to apply that provide those services with the hope, with the intent, over the next 18-month period, they will ramp up to some degree.
Thanks, Andy. And like staying in the workforce development space for just a second, another good question came from Jessie Beecham. She asked, would you accept the need for mental health services as one of the barriers in obtaining employment, just like, you know, looking at transportation, childcare, et cetera? And I think you wrote back concisely that yes, and, you know, just highlighted that the examples we list they're not everything, and they're just kind of meant to spur thinking, but they're certainly not comprehensive. And so, and that's kind of the spirit throughout the document. You may see examples, but we want you to look at the broader areas. So David, let's go back to you.
Yeah, and then I want to jump in a minute. Go ahead, David.
I've got some quick ones, Donna. Will the presentation be available later? Yes, it is our full intention to publish this presentation and Tuesday nights. We're running into some technical issues that we will resolve, but they will be posted on the county's nonprofit website soon. And along with that was a question about the slides. The slides are already actually up there. I think it's called Zoom slides or Zoom presentation slides are posted to the website. And I'll keep going for a second and then turn it over to Donna. If you currently receive funding from the county, will that grant impact that funding? The short answer is no. Please apply. Please specify, if you can, what these funds will be used for that may be different than what you're already using existing county funds for, if that helps. So it's definitely not a disqualifier. And then finally, if funded, can you be funded at an amount that is less or more than request? I would say the answer to more is unlikely. The answer to less is possible. And again, that's really going to depend on the review of the totality of applicants and the available funding. But I think anytime, let's say an agency asks for $75,000 and all we have to offer is 50, I think we would definitely reach out to that agency to make sure that they could do some work with the 50 as opposed to needing the whole 75.
So I just wanted to add to that. I had a question that was sent directly to me, which is, can you apply in two different spots? So for example, could you apply in food security for a program that your agency has and also apply to be the provider of the microgrants? And I think the answer is yes, but we would take all of that under consideration. So you may not necessarily get both, but we wouldn't necessarily consider that mutually exclusive. So it is possible. I think in general, we will be looking to provide one grant to most organizations, but we can see some unique situations such as that one where perhaps it is possible that the organization best suited to provide the microgrants could also be doing other original programmatic work that they have applied for. So, you know, we'll take all of that into consideration.
I would like to add real quick a clarifying question. It was asked if this grant will replace the county grant funding. We're maybe mixing a couple different things. The current county nonprofit funding process that's existed will be for 3.5 years, or for 2.5 years, I believe, for the food security nonprofits. That will end on December 31st of 2020. So that will stop. However, the county funds nonprofits and works with our community partners in a lot of different areas. Those would not be affected that I know of by a new application or a new contract for these specific target areas. So I hope that helps that question.
And I would say if you find that confusing, like, so if you are wondering about your particular situation, because the county does fund nonprofits in so many different ways, I would reach directly out through Anna with that question about your specific organization. Michael, what are you seeing?
Yeah, and if we miss any of your questions, please, please let us know. We want to make sure that we address them all. There was a question from Tavares Adams, and I may ask him if he feels comfortable to come off mute. To clarify, what about a nonprofit that's working with DPS during the school day and after school offering programs for kids and families? I don't know if you want to clarify the question. We definitely want to be able to answer it and give you guidance.
Good morning, everyone. How you doing?
Hey, good morning.
Hello. I work for communities and schools of Durham, and we are trying to do more work inside the school. We want to offer more after-school programs. We do a IY parent class, so we wanted to give more parent support, parent classes that's inside of the school that where we're working with the youth, working with the families, because it's easier for us to reach the community in the schools and try to offer like we want to do a food pantry. We want to offer like STEM projects. We want to offer even helping them get clothes or helping them find different avenues to support them during the COVID-19.
I'm happy to jump in here. Michael, I think this will answer both Tavares and Emily's questions, just about sort of more specific project ideas. Both of these seem to align with the child, youth, family, wellness, and learning focus area. And we are not putting a lot of restrictions on activities or on partnerships. So I think if you understand your project, and see your work reflected in the funding objectives in that focus area, there's a lot more information in Appendix 2 in the RFP, which I think starts on page 9 of the RFP. Then please submit an application. I don't think we find ourselves with the ability to speak to the strength of particular ideas, just because we'll need to make decisions based on the whole of what we receive. But I think if you see your work reflected in the language of that focus area, please submit an application.
Yeah. And I would add that I think we also trust that as you all submit your applications, you're also offering us your expertise and your experience in the communities you serve. And so one of the things for us, I think, in reviewing the applications is we're also going to be listening to what you are sharing with us about what's happening in our community in terms of the impacts from COVID and the challenges in reemerging from that crisis. So we fully expect to learn a lot as well from these applications. So a lot of this will be about how you share that information with us so we can understand what you're trying to address. Let's see, I don't know whether I was with David or Michael, but I'll go back to David. See if there's...
Hello, everyone. We've got a question about approximately 4 agencies per target area. That is correct. That is kind of the benchmark. We're not going to do many more, I can assure you, but there may be some that, again, depending on the strength of applications and need, we do a few less. And then child, family, the longer named one, child, youth, family, wellness, and learning, may have 1 or 2 less just automatically because of the partnership with the City of Durham and the Office of Youth. And then there was another question that will bring Andy into the fray. Workforce development. Andy, if we already partner with Durham Tech and send our clients there to earn certifications that help with future employment prospects that are not part of the Back to Work initiative, will this be considered? Or do we really need to focus on certifications, credentials offered through the Back to Work initiative only?
Let's see here. I'm trying to find that question. Could you actually repeat that again, David, if you don't mind?
Of course. If we already partner with Durham Tech and send our clients there to earn certifications that help with future employment prospects that are not part of the Back to Work initiative, will this be considered, or do you really want them to focus on certifications and credentials offered through the Back to Work initiative only? And Miss Spill,
Yeah,
if that's
okay,
your,
so that's,
say your name, feel free to turn on your microphone and you can clarify the question if I've said it incorrectly.
Hey, it's me. No, I think you read it correctly. We partner with Durham Tech already, but I was just reading through the credentials under the Back to Work initiative, and some of the ones that we offer are not listed there. So I didn't know if we really needed to focus on that list specifically, or if it's okay that we have partnerships outside of that.
understood. Okay, thank you, Melissa, for that question and for clarifying as well. So, you know, when we look at the impacts that COVID's having, we certainly identified back to work as the prioritized vehicle to be able to help people transition quickly. But, you know, that is not to say that is the exclusive vehicle. You know, we understand that there's some programming that can be connected with the Durham Workforce Development Board as well. So, and maybe, you know, we can kind of, if you want to send me an email and we can kind of think about this a little bit more offline. You know, I think kind of the spirit is the things that we have listed are not exclusive, and there may be other strategies to help achieve our goals. So we'll consider, you know, we'll consider that application and kind of talk about that a little bit more.
I also got a direct question, which may be relevant to others. The question was, could you please clarify if projects need to be new or if they can be COVID-19 response projects that have already started? And the answer to that is that they do not need to be new. This can be funding for work that is already happening, assuming it's, you know, not, you know, let's see, what am I trying to say here? Someone might need to help me, but assuming it's not, that you're not receiving duplicate funding for the exact same work, right? But you do not have to, we are open to new project ideas, but they do not have to be new project ideas.
Yeah, I think we fully expect, I mean, if you think about something like food security, there were hungry people in Durham before, there are more hungry people in Durham now. And we know we can maybe change the ways in which we're doing things and adjust what we're doing, but ultimately we do need to help get food to people. And so we don't expect you to come up with some, you know, new and creative thing just for the purposes of this grant. But if you're doing something really well that you need support for, and you can share what that looks like, we are very open to looking at what you're already doing.
One of the questions came in, and I think it was maybe addressed, but I want to make sure it's clear. Even if your question is subject matter expert specific or a target area specific, please email them directly if you have the emails, but don't hesitate to email Anna Hawksworth. She'll be great at routing the questions to the appropriate subject matter expert to ensure we get back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, because some of the most simple questions she can probably answer, particularly if there's logistical things or amounts of money or application questions, for sure. Michael, did you see anything that you want to highlight at this point?
No, I definitely want folks to come off mute and let us know if there are questions. Yes, Ricky, we'll definitely have Andy put his email address in the chat in just a second. Thanks for that question. I guess we want to make sure we've answered your questions. You know, we can hang on for a few more minutes as well, and we just want to answer your questions. But if y'all want to come off mute and ask something or ask for clarification on anything we've discussed or anything else, please feel free to do so now.
You can kind of raise your hand or. So you're right. Let's see. Okay, well, it looks like we don't have any burning questions, so I will check with my colleagues to see if there's any final words that we want to offer. We definitely thank you for being here with us today.
I'll chime in one more thing we're more than willing to help with. We don't want technology challenges or anything to be a barrier to your application. So please also reach out to us at any time if you're having trouble with the application or clarification. We're more than happy to help in every way possible to make sure everyone has an equal chance, an equitable chance to apply for the programming.
I'd also just add, as Keith talked about earlier in the session, and as those of you who've participated in the county nonprofit funding process before have noticed, we are making some changes. And also, given the pandemic, those changes are maybe a little different this round than they would have been if there wasn't a pandemic. But we are very open to your feedback, concerns, thoughts. So please feel free to share that with us as well, as we are in the process of shifting this nonprofit funding process and working to make it more targeted and more equitable and ultimately more useful for our community.
Okay, well, I think that sounds like we are wrapped up. Again, we thank you for your time today. Please send an email to Anna Hawksworth if you have any follow-up questions, and we look forward to seeing some of those applications.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the nonprofits. Thank you.